uh,
All right. So now we're going into the race.
yes.
The first topic of the race that I have is obviously the race start. We have Leclerc starting first.
Yes.
Obviously, I think the main first topic that comes from the beginning of the race is Carlos Sainz.
Yes, and,
Um,
it does up to Paul or to qualifying as well, which
yeah,
is like my man struggled the entire weekend. Like
yeah.
he couldn't get off the ground. Like he's already like in the first two races he was already struggling with the car trying to get it under control, but like this time even the car was fighting him. Like
So this is the Carlos Sainz moment. Let it all out.
yeah, the Carlos Sainz hour. Now, in your opinion, I want to hear what you have to say first. How much of the blame do you put on the car, the team, the preparation, and how much do you put on Sainz as a driver?
Okay, so I'm gonna give you some context for Carlos Sainz for this weekend,
Okay.
in case you didn't know, and then maybe we can take that into account.
All right.
Obviously, he was gonna qualify. I don't know if he could have gotten pole position, but I think he could have qualified better than ninth.
Mhm.
But then obviously we had the Alonso crash. Therefore, there was a red flag, and as soon as he was crossing the finish line, so he
Mhm.
couldn't get that lap in. Then so that was unfortunate for him. Also, when on his next lap, when he was gonna finally try to get a good lap, he made a mistake in the car,
Mhm.
and then
Yep.
he had to abort the lap.
Yeah,
So
but I think that partially had to do with the fact that like there was some issue in the pits and they had to send him out quickly, and he in order
yes,
to make it on time he couldn't warm up the tires. But go
yep.
on.
So they sent him out onto track like a little bit later. He didn't have time to warm up the track, the tires, and then during his lap he also made a mistake. So it's just like things that end up piling up. And
Mhm.
then also at the beginning of the race, his steering wheel wasn't working. I don't know if you knew that. So they had to change
Yeah,
his
they
steering
changed it.
wheel,
Yeah,
and the new
right
steering
before.
wheel didn't have the settings for his car.
Oh,
So he was racing with like the incorrect settings on the steering wheel. So that also piled up because then the steering wheel kind of doesn't respond as he's been like
like he's used
driving
to.
it the whole weekend.
Yeah.
And so eventually he
Espe-
makes the mistake.
yeah. Well,
I
sorry, I was
Go
gonna say
ahead.
about the steering wheel because especially you like the drivers get to customize pretty much everything in the wheel. They can choose where the buttons are and like if you have a favorite setting, like how you like do the brake bias and stuff. Like they customize it that way. So not having that, very inconvenient. Go on.
Yes. So it's like unfortunate events kept happening for Carlos Sainz, the red flag, the Ferrari crew sending him late, him making a mistake, the steering wheel,
Yeah.
and also his start was awful.
Hmm.
Like at the beginning of the race, so he's like also falling behind. You
Which
could
part
say
of
that it was part of the steering wheel
yeah.
issue.
Hmm.
So it's like something happens, and then that goes bad on the next thing because the first thing happened, and it's just like this thing just piling up, one mistake into the next mistake, into the next unfortunate event, into the next unfortunate event.
Yeah.
And I think he was already, I don't know, tilted. Also, he puts a lot of pressure on himself
To be better.
to
Yeah.
beat Leclerc, to really be the Ferrari like number one guy. And I think he was just like trying too hard, and he made that mistake and just took
Yeah.
himself out of the race.
Which I think when he races like well, and he tends to be a very consistent driver.
Yes.
And when he races well, he can beat Leclerc in some weekends. There are some weekends where Leclerc is not like 100%. And in the past, I mean, that's kind of why he ended up with more points at the end. Even though I would argue that Abu Dhabi, the last race was messed up, and like there were a couple of
Yep.
incidents with the safety car, blah blah blah. But he is good if he races well, if he has that time to
Yeah. He's a really consistent, like a solid driver. I don't
mhm.
think he's like the fastest driver, but
No.
like the thing that you always think when you look at Carlos Sainz is that he's a really solid, consistent driver.
Yeah.
So if you bring him in, he's just meant to do that consistent job. He's not supposed to be the superstar, but if he's so consistent that he ends up being, that's a bonus for him.
Yeah.
but he really wants to be. I feel like he really wants to be. And like when you see him on the interviews, he's just so angry with himself all the time. He's upset. Like I think on previous years, he's been more charismatic, more like, yeah, I'm good. Hey, yeah, we're trying our best. And he happens to be like a really chill guy. But like now, every interview, he's just angry.
Yeah.
So I think like that pressure, and I don't think it's the outside world putting this pressure on him. I think it's him putting that pressure on himself. Yeah. So I just think he needs to just calm down. You're a good driver. Just
it's a long season too, you know. Like a couple of bad races do happen, and it obviously looks like Leclerc immediately just has more of a handle of the car. Like, and I've always said this even before, you know, the season started, that like Leclerc is just a very naturally gifted driver. Like you put him in any car and he'll drive the shit out of it. Kind of like Verstappen, and maybe like a few others. Sainz needs some time to get used to the car. Like, you know, he comes from McLaren, different car. I know this is his second season on Ferrari, but like, you know, it's still kind of new.
But this is still a new car and everything.
It's still a new team, and you gotta get used to it before you can drive it on the edge, on the I
mean,
limit.
yeah, you do have drivers like Leclerc that as soon as he came into Ferrari, he could just drive the car.
Yeah, like on the second weekend, he was already winning like Bahrain until that engine thing. Yeah. So yeah. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of things. Eventually, you'll catch up to Leclerc, and actually, once you catch up to Leclerc, like Carlos Sainz is consistently able to drive the car on the limit. Like he is good enough to do that. He just needs to give himself some time to get there, to get the car in position, and, you know, not be too impatient. And that's what happened, you know, after the start of the race. He just got super impatient.
Yeah. And that's what happens with him every time. Like I think when he was also in McLaren, well, he was solid when Norris first came in, but then like in the last season of McLaren, Norris came in really strong.
Yeah.
And then Carlos was like a little here and there. And then eventually he got it like a good solid grasp of the car, and then he started beating Norris towards the end of the season. He's just like really consistent. So I think this time, like, he's not following his own pattern. He's trying to like really be the superstar. And I'm like, you can be a superstar in your own way.
I mean, the thing is that like he kind of is in some way. I mean, he's like a success story. Like nobody thought of him being as this fast, you know, like this guy from Spain. But like slowly he made his way up from like Toro Rosso to McLaren, and then to Renault, to McLaren, and now to Ferrari.
Ferrari.
Like, he's proving himself to be really fast. He's just, you know, and I think he will come down a little bit.
He's following the Fernando Alonso game plan.
Yeah.
So Renault into McLaren into Ferrari.
Yeah. And I think he's good enough. He's good enough to be there. And by the end of the season, I suspect that he'll be able to have some wins under his belt.
So, okay, question then for you: do you think he'll be able to fight for the world championship this year?
At this point, I don't know, because like Leclerc is pulling so far ahead as it is. But I think him winning a few races at some point might put like a realistic target on that. As of the moment, I'm gonna say it's unlikely. It's unlikely, not impossible, just unlikely. Because Leclerc.
What's the percentage that you think you give him at this point?
I don't know, of winning the championship.
Yeah,
probably under 5%.
Just under 5%.
Yeah, just because Verstappen's there, you know, Russell's there, you know, you're gonna have to deal with Leclerc the entire year, and it's not like Leclerc really goes like crashes out a lot either. I mean, it happens, but not like a bunch of times. So I don't know. At this point, it's hard to tell. I mean, like Leclerc has already got like a whole 30 something points difference between him and the second place, which is Russell. So it's hard to say. It's not to say that Leclerc has it in the bag. It's too early for that. There's too many races also this year. But you know, I see it less likely. And I just give the percentages to other people. I give like Leclerc at this point like 55% chance of winning, and like Verstappen like 30 or 35, and then other people, you know, I don't know. You know, so it's just like the 5% is still within Sainz somewhere.
Okay.